Hello, Shadowrek here. Today's video is going to be going over the class tuning that came on June 30th for PTR, looking at Season 3 of The War Within. So, let's get into it. I will note, before I even start scrolling, Havoc Demon Hunter's on the patch notes. Don't panic about that. That's going to be a good thing, and I'll get to that as I go through the video. So, just to look at it all in short, first we have Death Knight. Specifically, Frost is kind of the main target here. Frost had Deathbringer nerfed. Been told these are very minor. Doesn't really matter. Um, but when we come further down the list, we also have Sandlane nerfs general, and Frost got a 3% all ability damage nerf. Obviously, this will not affect like melee swings, and a Blit got a larger nerf. So this helps bring it down a little bit and kind of bring it more in line. So yeah, what I've been told, this should affect its single target more than its AoE. Unholy got a 20% nerf to Death Coil. Not the biggest thing in the world, just kind of bringing those specs back more in line. Next we have VDH. Now, again, for Havoc, a nerf to VDH is really good news for us in the way of M+ viability, but this is a very small nerf. When they have Demon Spikes up, they're going to have 2% less parry, which is relevant. It's absolutely a relevant nerf, but it's not that big. This is also paired with the small mastery nerf that came through last week, and together they might make a small difference in survivability, but I don't think it's really going to change much of anything. They're definitely still top 2 with Prop Paladin on PTR, so that's a little unfortunate for us, but anything pushing them down a bit is not that bad. We have some small buffs for Feral Druid, just to make it a good bit better. I don't actually know anything about the Evoker changes, sorry. I don't know anything about that. Hunter. Now, this goes into Marksman, which, BM's fallen out. It got nerfed down to, at the very least, reasonable levels. I stopped seeing them on PTR after the last round of nerfs. I'm not sure if they're bad and unviable, or if it's just because everyone's playing Marksman because it's a lot of fucking fun and it's very good. Anyway, Marksman got hit hard. So, for Dark Ranger, Black Arrow damage reduced by 8%. Not massive. They kept doing this over and over to Black Arrow. It really shouldn't be too overtuned. And I think they just hit it because they also wanted to hit Sentinel. And they nerfed the 2-piece, so it's only 10% aim shot bonus damage instead of 20. I believe this was previously nerfed from 30 down to 20. But what the really big change is down here. Trick shots effectiveness reduced to 60%, and this was 75. This is what is the damage dealt from their abilities when they bounce. When you've multi-shotted and you have trick shots up. So this is effectively a 20% nerf to most of their cleave. Definitely not all of it. A lot of the sentinel effects are not going to be affected by this, but aim shot, which is absolutely their top damage, effectively gets 20% nerfed in AoE. This is going to make a massive difference in their overalls and should bring them pretty much in line. I think this is getting to the point now where I comfortably on Havoc will be able to beat the majority of Marksman Hunters, plus they're doing a lot less upfront AoE burst, and that gives us situations where we'll be able to deal more damage than we were able to before, as they were honestly just stealing a lot of the AoE that was available in a dungeon. So they should look pretty significantly worse after this change, where the last ones altogether hadn't really shown meaningful changes because they were so far ahead. This should put it kind of in line now. Next, we also have Mage. There's some small Sun Fury nerfs. Nothing really too major there. There is a small Arcane nerf, from what I was told by Porum, and this is offhand. He guessed in 5 target, it's about 3 to 5% loss. That is 3 to 5% single target or priority damage that is getting lost in a 5 target scenario. So specifically, it hits their funnel. Not enough though. I've talked about this somewhat recently, but I went through and I actually did some math and simming looking at our funnel after I had heard from Preheat the numbers for Arcane funnel. And if I go in here and look this up, it is very, very disgusting. Give me 1 second. here. So for Arcane, before this nerf, they were looking at 30 to 35% increase in single target in a 5-target scenario, and 42% for Spellslinger on 8 targets. That is a crazy amount of damage. So this nerf will bring them down a little bit. That said, Havoc was also incredibly good looking at the numbers there. For Havoc, we were looking at on 5 targets in a single target build about 16%, but in our M plus builds at 5 target we gain about 21% single target. At 8 targets we gain about 31%, which is, these are insanely high numbers, and at any other iteration of the game up until this expansion this really was not considered acceptable. Um, and then every target over 8 targets is about 160k DPS to the main target for us. So a lot of value on funnel, and Arcane is the only thing I want to say is that's competitive with us. It is better than us at it, but that was brought down a bit, so we're almost in line with Arcane now. Despite the fact that we are going to be discussing at it next season, they are still slightly better at it. Next, there's also Fire, which was being played, I think, more commonly. Caught a 3% overall nerf plus a Flame Strike nerf, so that's going to hit their AoE even more, and again, should bring them down more in line. There are monk changes. From what I was told, these Windwalker nerfs on the Conduit of Celestials and into their tier set were pretty similar to the size of their aura buff. I'm not sure how true that is, but I think at the very least, this is going to change them less than you would expect, and may not even be a buff. If it is, it's going to be a small one. Next, we have healer changes on Holy Paladin. I'm not going to speak on those. Good luck for those guys. For Retribution, we have some AoE buffs. Divine Storm 10%, Wake of Ashes 10%, Seething Flames, Truce Wake 20%, plus a bug where Wake of Ashes was not benefiting from Avenging Wrath. So Retribution seemed like it was doing pretty okay on PTR, so this should put them in a good spot, if anything. But I'll have to see more and do some testing with them. And then a relevant change related to mana cost for Disc Priest. Rogues got pretty significant buffs. The numbers I was hearing for like Fatebound Assassination was something like 8 to 9%. Outlaw got a 3.5% with a Killing Spree buff. Subtlety got 5%, but then they got changes that changed the effectiveness of these. I think all of the specs got buffed from what I had heard, so they may be in a pretty good spot now. And lastly, we had Warlock. There was some small destruction nerfs in Hellcaller, and in turn, Chaos Bolt got buffed. So overall, the main takeaways, though, are the top specs, which is Frost Death Knight, nerfed. Marksman Hunter, which was by far number 1, got a very heavy nerf, specifically their AoE, so this is mostly focused for Mythic Plus, where they were looking insane. And then Arcane and Fire Mage both got nerfed. So as Havocs that just didn't get changed and were already looking pretty good, but not in that top tier of classes, this is great news for us. All 3 of the specs that were looking to be like absolutely played and were definitely ahead of us got brought down, and definitely now in the range where you can just beat them. And we have a very favorable damage profile, which kind of matches Arcane. So there's a lot of comps that we can fit in better than Arcane could, where our buff can be useful and we can do what they do. As well as that, VDH got a small nerf, making it a little less popular going into the next season. It still might end up being meta, but every little bit does end up mattering, so seeing another hit to them is good for our viability in Mythic Plus. That's really everything for this video. I just want to quickly go over the patch notes. I know that a lot of people are disappointed knowing that Havoc didn't get changes again, but as I mentioned before, when it comes to like numbers tuning and everything, Havoc is in a good spot. There isn't a need for changes, and any changes that we want that are like baseline design changes or big quality of life changes, that's something that we're really going to need to look for either in the 0.5 patch, probably unlikely there too, or more likely going into midnight. So that's where I would focus your feedback if you're trying to get changes to the class, and spec is really more for at midnight, and it's probably set in stone as we are now. So thank you all for watching. Again, if you appreciate my content, I appreciate like on the video and subscribe to my channel. And you can also catch me live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Shodarek. You can also follow me on Twitter at or x.com/Shodarek, where I'll post various things, some Havoc information, some Havoc complaining, and my streams when I'm feeling like posting about those. Thank you. Have a good one.